In the middle of the night, my son took me to the hospital with a fever, only to run into my ex-boyfriend of 6 years. He looked at me mockingly, a widow and her child at the hospital. "Where's the kid's dad, uncle?" My mom said my dad passed away. My good son jumped into answer mode. "I understand. After all, he was old, so it's normal to pass away." "Susanna, you must have inherited quite a bit. He really is like expecting ivory from a dog's mouth." I looked him up and down a few times and nodded in agreement. "Everything you said is right." Chapter 1. As per the monthly routine, the editor is sure to rush me for the manuscript at the end of the month. This month is no exception. "Susanna, I must see the manuscript before the end of the month, or you won't get your payment this month." The editor started threatening me early in the morning, gripping my lifeline. "Without the manuscript fee, I won't have money to support my son." Editor, rest assured, I will definitely submit the manuscript on time. I swear I never delay my submissions. I promised sincerely. Yet even my son, who was watching TV, couldn't stand it and sarcastically remarked, "Mommy, it's a good thing lightning only strikes scumbags when they lie, or you'd have been struck countless times." Although my son was stating the facts, I must maintain a calm and composed smile. I, Susanna, a female romance writer, am in the late stages of procrastination. At the end of every month, such deadline reminders play out in my home, and for the sake of that fund for raising my son, I start a round-the-clock writing spree. Finally, I collapsed, coming down with a high fever in the middle of the night. So, in the middle of the night, my son dragged me to the hospital, and incidentally, we ran into my ex-boyfriend from 6 years ago, who is also my son's biological father. Fortunately, my son looks like me, avoiding a melodramatic family reunion and a custody battle. Ethan and I were college classmates. He was the high-achieving star of the medical school, but also notoriously sharp-tongued. Back then, many beautiful girls pursued him, only to be scared off by his sharp tongue. I was the only one reckless enough to charge forward, and eventually, I won the handsome man. As for why we broke up, let's just say it's a past too painful to recall. 6 years later, upon our reunion, Ethan wasted no time in showcasing his sharp-tongued skills. Even though I agreed with what he said, he still looked as if he'd eaten something unpleasant. However, the main issue now is that I'm running a high fever and am nearly exhausted from it. "Doctor, please check my illness first. If you keep dawdling, the patient will die." I don't know if my words were too prophetic, but as soon as I finished speaking, I fell straight to the ground, and my good son quickly dodged away. "Son, your mom only weighs 80 pounds. She won't crush you." I was pulled by Ethan, avoiding an intimate encounter with Mother Earth. Seeing me in his arms, I quickly spoke up to block his sharp-tongued remarks. "Don't get the wrong idea. I'm just weak from a fever. Not throwing myself at you, uncle. I can testify that my mom didn't throw herself at anyone. Although my mom wants to find me a pretty boy stepfather, her life is more important right now. Please treat her quickly." "Martin, shut up. Truly, my good son. If you can't explain, then don't." "When did your mom ever try to find you a stepfather?" "It's my fault for having a loose tongue while watching dramas. Always talking about wanting a young handsome guy. Worried about not finding a pretty boy while holding onto your ex's inheritance?" Ethan still mocked. His words were truly sharp. He. Besides an awkward laugh, I couldn't find a suitable expression. In Ethan's eyes, I must be not only vain but also someone who can't stand loneliness. But it doesn't matter. We won't see each other again anyway. If I have to go to the hospital again, I definitely won't come to this one. Oh, what a jinx. I won't go to the hospital ever again. Chapter 2. So what's the situation now? I'm on the hospital bed getting an infusion. My son and my ex are chatting, and the scene is surprisingly harmonious. "Kid, you look pretty good." For the first time ever, I actually heard the sharp-tongued person give a compliment, and it was my son who charmed them. Of course, my mom has good genes. "Martin, you're really not modest at all. Just like me. With my genes, how could my son be anything less?" Of course, his father's genes aren't bad either. I sneaked a glance at Ethan, who was wearing a "you're exaggerating" expression. I instinctively switched to an awkward smile mode. As long as I'm not awkward, The awkwardness is someone else's problem. He glanced at me, clearly not wanting to engage, and continued conversing with my son. How old are you? The question made my heart race, and I excitedly blurted out, 4 years old. My voice was so loud that both of them turned to look at me, and even the person in the next hospital bed gave me a look. I was so awkward that I could almost dig out a 3-bedroom apartment with my toes. But none of this is the main point. Keeping Martin's age a secret is what's most important. Ethan must not find any clues. However, despite all my calculations, I overlooked my good son. Mom, didn't you say we shouldn't lie? I'm not 5 years old this year. Why are you lying to Uncle? I feel like there are 3 black lines on my face. Son, were you a master of sabotage in your past life? In this life, you're here just to ruin your mother's plans. Haha. If I said I remembered wrong, would you believe me? I pretended to be calm, but inside I was panicking. With Ethan's academic genius, would he become suspicious? Do you think I would believe that? Ethan looked at me with a half smile, making me feel uneasy. So, in a moment of heated impulse, I blurted out, "Don't get the wrong idea. I wasn't pregnant when we broke up." Today I realized I have a problem where my mouth is faster than my brain. But Ethan's expression clearly changed, and it wasn't as creepy as before, which made me breathe a huge sigh of relief. Just as I was about to catch my breath, the next second it was taken away again. Of course, I wouldn't misunderstand. How could a woman as vain and eager to marry into money as you be pregnant with my child? Ethan's words were laced with obvious sarcasm, making my heart feel stifled. Yet, I couldn't find a single flaw. It was me who said I was vain. And it was me who said I wanted to marry into money. There's no way to argue against it. Looking at the man in front of me, wearing a white coat, tall and more mature, steady, and charming than before, I was instantly lost in memories. Running into Ethan was quite a coincidence. My classmate and I were on our way back to the dormitory after class, passing by the library, when we happened to see a girl confessing to him. At that time, Ethan was facing away from us, and we just heard him reject the girl harshly and thoroughly. The girl was crying her heart out, and I couldn't bear to watch. Back then, I was young and had a tendency to meddle in others' affairs. I thought if you're going to reject someone, just do it. But why be so harsh with your words? So, in a moment of impulse, I rushed over, and my roommate used all her strength but couldn't hold me back. I ran over and shouted at Ethan, "Are you even a man? Bullying a girl like this?" The next second, I saw his face and instantly felt like I was in heaven. This guy is just too handsome. As for stepping in to help when seeing injustice, I had long forgotten about it, only thinking about feasting my eyes on the handsome guy. I refused the confession. "Do you have any objections?" Ethan gave me a light glance at that moment, and I quickly waved my hand with a smile. No objections. No objections. That day, I was just as awkward as I am today. Later, after Ethan left, my roommate filled me in on his background. The academic genius of the medical school, the heartthrob of our university, an unattainable high mountain flower, but also famously sharp-tongued, scaring off many girls who confess to him, yet even more are eager to try. That's right, I became one of those eager ones too, and from that day on, I decided to pick this high mountain flower. Chapter 3. After that, you could always see me chasing after Ethan around the school. When he attended classes, I would audit them. When he went to the library, I would pretend to read. When he played basketball, I would bring him water. In short, I seized every opportunity to be around him every day. Ethan refused my confession many times, and each time he was quite rude. But his sharp-tongued skills are useless on me because I have thick skin. That time in the library, he seriously asked me, "Susanna, what exactly do you like about me?" "I like everything about you. Your whole being suits my taste. No matter what you're like, I like it." I also changed my usual playful demeanor and answered him very seriously. "I remember he said at that time, Susanna, I have no plans to date in college, so don't waste your time on me." What did I say at the time? I said, "Ethan, then I'll just queue up. When you graduate from college, I'll be the first to date you." Back then, my pursuit of Ethan was truly passionate and brave. I guess now I wouldn't even have the courage to say an extra word. I consistently checked in by his side for a month. Not only did everyone in their medical department know me, but basically the entire school knew that Susanna from the literature department was crazily pursuing the academic genius Ethan. At that time, the school's forum even started placing bets, speculating whether I could win him over. But most were mocking, saying it was impossible for me to get him. My roommate also advised me to give up. Susanna, you are the flower of our literature department. Why hang yourself on one tree? It's very necessary. Ethan is the tallest and most handsome tree, and I'm willing to hang myself on it. After saying this with a grin, I went out. Today, Ethan has an anatomy class, so I decided to buy a cup of milk tea and wait for him at the entrance of their laboratory. However, instead of waiting for Ethan, I encountered his classmate Gabriella, who is also his professor's daughter. Since I started pursuing Ethan, I've learned a lot about him, and Gabriella is the girl mentioned most often. Everyone says she is the most suitable match for Ethan. Of course, I don't agree. Ethan, this unattainable flower, is mine. Are you Susanna? Do you think making it known throughout the school will make Ethan accept your pursuit? I advise you to give up early. As soon as she appeared, she looked at me with an air of superiority, which I really disliked. I like him. How I pursue him is my choice, and whether to give up is also my choice. I don't know if it was because I refuted her or if my blatant pursuit angered her, but she started to become somewhat indiscreet with her words. A girl like you is not worthy of Ethan at all. He is a good student, will go abroad, and become the best doctor. And you're just a slacker at the bottom of the class. Can't even find a job, and can't offer him any help. I don't need anyone's help. Just then, Ethan came out with a cold expression, walked to my side, and took my hand to lead me away. He actually took my hand, and I was so shocked that I was completely stunned. It wasn't until we had walked a long way that I realized what was happening. Of course, since he delivered himself to my doorstep, I had no reason to let him go. Ethan, have you agreed to my pursuit? I pestered him for a clear answer, feeling anxious because he had been so indifferent despite my long pursuit. Ethan calmly said at the time, I don't hold hands with girls who aren't my girlfriend. That night, I was so excited that I couldn't sleep at all. Dating him was smoother than I imagined. Ethan seems aloof, but he's actually very nice to those close to him. Although still sharp-tongued, he would come to our dormitory every morning to bring me breakfast, and when he didn't have classes, he would accompany me to mine, doing everything a boyfriend should do. We planned to take the graduate school entrance exam abroad together, planned to get married in the future, and even planned for future children. Those days were my happiest. However, just before graduating in our senior year, we broke up, and I was the one who initiated it. At that time, Ethan was competing for the only overseas spot in medical school, and he was so busy that he was hardly ever seen. I supported him a lot and knew that spot was very important to him. It was also during that time that Gabriella approached me. Susanna, you know Ethan's family situation isn't good. That spot is his chance to turn things around. And my dad is his mentor. Whether he gets the spot or not is up to my dad. Susanna, if you two continue to be together, he'll never get that spot. You understand what I mean, right? This time, Gabriella was still aloof, but her attitude was noticeably more resolute. She was certain I would break up with Ethan for the sake of his studies in future. And in the end, I did as she asked. I didn't want Ethan to be held back because of me. On the day of the breakup, I deliberately had my dad take me out to eat and then drive me back to school, making sure Ethan saw it. He asked me the reason, whether it was because I was too busy to spend time with him, and promised that after this period, he would make it up to me. Only God knows how hard it was for me at that time. Yet I had to pretend to be someone who abandoned her boyfriend for money. Ethan, did you see that man? He's very wealthy. If I go with him, I won't have to work and will have endless money to spend. But what can you offer me? If I remember correctly, you still owe student loans, right? I've figured it out. I like the life of wealthy people. I saw his fist clench tightly. And finally, he released it in defeat. He gave me one last look, said nothing, and turned to leave. In the 6 years that followed, I never saw him again. After breaking up with Ethan, I was busy graduating and didn't listen to any news about him. 2 months later, I fainted and was taken to the hospital, only to find out I was pregnant. Chapter 4. Suddenly, a pain came from the back of my hand, and I quickly snapped back to reality, seeing Ethan removing the needle. He was so close that I felt a bit flustered. He said in a calm voice, "I've prescribed you some medicine. The instructions are inside. Come back for another infusion tomorrow afternoon." As a doctor, he was very responsible. "Thank you, Uncle. I'll bring some food tomorrow to thank you for saving my mom. My son is really quite outgoing. Perhaps it's a genetic trait. Uncle, I'm not a child anymore. I don't need your snacks." I quickly got out of bed to stop my son's chatter, fearing that if he continued, he'd reveal all our family secrets. "Thank you for today. We'll be heading back now." After saying that, she pulled my good son away. By the time we got back, it was already very late. My son couldn't resist falling asleep in the car, and when we got out, I carried him upstairs. Over the years as a single mom, I've developed quite the arm strength. By the next morning, my fever had reduced, and I no longer felt lightheaded. At the breakfast table, my son spoke to me with a somewhat troubled expression. "Mom, I dreamed about that uncle from last night. He made me laugh like that." A kid can actually dream, and I suddenly became interested in his dream. "What did you dream about that uncle? Is Ethan really so likable to kids?" Just one meeting and he remains unforgettable, even appearing in dreams. As a result, my son became even more troubled. His little brows furrowed tightly, and he pouted. "I dreamed that the uncle said he was my dad." Pfft. The mouthful of milk I had just drunk almost sprayed out, choking my throat painfully. "My good son, are you trying to shock your old mother into an early grave with such words?" After a long pause, I finally said, "Son, you can eat recklessly, but you can't speak recklessly. That uncle is not your father, although he really is. As your mother, I can't tell you, mainly because I'm worried I won't win the custody battle." Now my son is no longer troubled, but rather a bit cheerful. It's a good thing he's not, otherwise he's too handsome, and I'm worried. "Mom, you'd be so smitten that you'd neglect your work, fail to write, and then your editor would dock your pay, leaving you with no money to support me." I was surprised again, secretly wondering if the art of language could be inherited. My son clearly has a tendency to become sharp-tongued. To prevent my good son from continuing to discuss his dad, I quickly changed the topic. Fortunately, he accepted the fact of not having a dad from a young age and didn't keep asking, which was a relief for me. The cold is almost gone, so I naturally started working hard to meet my writing deadlines. My son and I are relying on this month's manuscript for next month's living expenses. For the sake of raising my son, I can temporarily change my procrastination habits. The day was so hectic that I completely forgot about the infusion in the afternoon that Ethan mentioned. The moment I received the call, I was still in a daze. "Hello, who are you looking for?" To be honest, I really didn't expect the call to be from Ethan. After all, our breakup was so ugly, and the fact that he still had my number was truly unexpected. Moreover, his number had changed, so it was even more impossible for me to guess it was him. "I want to see you at the hospital within half an hour." I could feel the chill in Ethan's voice through the phone, and it only took a second to recognize his voice. Given how deeply those years were etched in my memory, I just didn't react to what he said. Why should I go to the hospital? Infusion! I could clearly feel him gritting his teeth, and I could even sense him trying hard to hold back from retorting at me. After his reminder, I remembered his medical advice from last night, telling me to go for an infusion this afternoon. But I've already reduced my fever, so I don't need it anymore. I've already reduced my fever, so I don't need another infusion. The main point is, I don't want to face him. The pressure is too much. I'm afraid I might accidentally blurt out that my son is his son. I thought that was the end of it. But unexpectedly he threatened me. "If I don't see you in half an hour, I don't mind going to your house to catch you." This threat made me laugh. I thought to myself, you don't even know where I live. Feel free. But I hadn't been smug for 3 seconds before I deflated. "Your address was on the medical record yesterday." I was instantly startled and hurriedly shouted, "No need to trouble yourself. I'll be right over." He absolutely can't come over. My son is still at home. It's better if the two of them have less contact. Although they don't look alike, blood ties are unpredictable. In the end, I could only resign myself to tidying up and heading to the hospital. As I was about to leave, my son was still confirming with me, "Mom, are you sure you don't want me to go with you?" I nodded, absolutely sure. "Martin, if you see that uncle at the hospital again and dream that he's your dad, you're really getting the short end of the stick by being someone else's son for nothing." Sure enough, my good son isn't the type to suffer losses. He shut the door right in front of me. Chapter 5. I took a taxi to the hospital alone to regain the dignity I embarrassingly lost last night. I even put on makeup seriously before leaving. I suppose I wanted to prove to my ex that I'm doing quite well. My damn competitive streak. After arriving at the hospital, I went straight to Ethan's office and seriously explained to him that I didn't need an infusion. Actually, I've already reduced my fever, so I don't need another infusion. Luckily, my brain kept up with my hands this time, and I didn't grab Ethan's hand to feel my forehead to prove I didn't have a fever. Otherwise, it would have been a social death scene. However, Ethan didn't take my words seriously at all. He glanced at me lightly. "Are you the doctor or am I the doctor?" Well, a quick defeat from the academic genius. Then can I at least struggle with something else? Can we shorten the time a bit? I'm rushing back to write my manuscript. I don't want my manuscript unfinished and then get killed by the editor. Most importantly, this concerns whether my son and I will eat meat or vegetables next month, which is a major life event. Ethan looked through the situation and saw my love for money, giving me a mocking glance. "What about the inheritance your husband who met the Grim Reaper left you? Have you squandered it all?" This question left me speechless, as I have no ex-husband, let alone a huge inheritance, so I could only make something up. "Yeah, you haven't raised a child. Children are four-legged money-eaters, and all my husband's money has been swallowed up. Son, your mother can only use you as a shield. I'll add an egg to your meal when we get home. Thanks for your friendly performance." Ethan glanced at me again, turned around to prepare the medicine, clearly not wanting to talk to me. This suits me just fine. If we keep talking, the lies I've told will circle the globe. He prepared the medicine and took me directly to yesterday's ward to start my infusion. His needlework was quite painful, and I suspected he was taking personal revenge, but I had no evidence. Watching the slowly dripping medicine, I was contemplating ways to speed it up. "If you don't want your son to send you off early, don't touch it." Ethan's cool voice sounded by the bedside, and I looked at him in surprise. Is he a mind reader? How could he guess what I was up to? Haha, I wasn't. The atmosphere was a bit awkward, so I laughed twice and made a feeble excuse. Ethan didn't even glance at me, just turned around and left, showing me the back of his head. He still has the same old formula. Going abroad didn't add any spice or change to him. After Ethan left, I was bored and scrolling through my phone alone. I originally wanted to sleep, but my mind was as awake as if I had drunk 10 cups of coffee. After more than an hour, I finally finished the infusion, and I was finally free. Ethan came in right on time to remove the needle, and I was getting ready to get out of bed and go home when a female doctor walked in. When I heard the voice, I thought today was truly unlucky. I actually ran into my rival in love from 6 years ago. Is this hospital somehow incompatible with me? "Ethan, my dad asked you to come over for dinner tonight. Don't forget." Gabriella walked in, naturally chatting with Ethan, and then she met my eyes. However, she is clearly more skilled now than back then. Her expression was supernatural when she saw me, and she greeted me, "Susanna, long time no see." I tugged at the corner of my mouth without replying. After all, I didn't want to encounter her, even though the atmosphere was already very awkward. Gabriella managed to maintain a surface harmony, as if she was ready for a long-lost reunion chat. "I heard from Ethan this morning that he ran into you, and I heard your son is quite grown up now. Truly a blessing." As soon as I heard this, I knew she was trying to drive a wedge between me and Ethan, reminding Ethan that I already have a son, and that there's no possibility for us. It seems she's not as calm as she appears. I overestimated her fighting spirit. If she knew that Ethan is my son's father, her expression would probably become quite colorful. Of course, happiness is having a son and being satisfied with everything. I can show off happiness too, The more I don't care about what others mind, the more I win completely. Yes. I also want to have a son as soon as possible, Gabriella said, smiling at Ethan with a look that suggested she wanted to have a child with him. Her happiness was a bit dazzling. I must admit, I was completely defeated. These 6 years have been wasted. My rank is still not as high as Gabriella's. It's so frustrating. Chapter 6. Gabriella gave me a victor's smile. Ethan, I won't interrupt your catching up. I'll go get busy. Remember to have dinner. She looked so magnanimous, completely crushing me. The ex. Of course. I refuse to be cannon fodder for the ex and the former rival. No need. My son is waiting for me at home. Catching up is not as important as my son. I waved with a smile and walked away briskly, indicating that I, the lady, do not care about you. Before leaving, I clearly felt Ethan's face darken. Who let his current girlfriend provoke me? Retaliation is my true nature. As I walked out of the ward, my pace noticeably quickened. I never want to come to this cursed hospital again. It's simply jinxing me. As a result, I hadn't even stepped out of the hospital's main entrance when someone grabbed me. Let me take you home. Ethan appeared behind me, even though I was walking so fast. He still managed to catch up. He really does have long legs and walks fast. I turned my head to look at him, suspicious of what was wrong with him. Wanting to take me home? When we broke up back then, I humiliated him so badly. It's already good enough that he doesn't want to kill me, and now he wants to kindly take me home? The point is, he's supposed to go home for dinner with Gabriella. No need. Don't let me delay Dr. Lee from going to his father-in-law's for dinner. Finally, it's my turn to mock him, and I didn't forget to give a soul-piercing glance at the end. I've truly mastered his essence. I'm a genius at impersonations. For some reason, facing my mockery, it seemed like Ethan's mood suddenly improved. Could it be that he has a masochistic tendency, having stayed abroad for so long and developed a perverted constitution? Then it's better for me to keep my distance from him. Dr. Lee, I'll be leaving first. Feel free. Without thinking, I turned and ran, but he grabbed my collar directly. What kind of bad habit is this? I'm not a cat. Why do you always grab me by the neck? I took a deep breath, holding back the anger in my chest, and forced a smile as I spoke. Dr. Ethan, is there anything else you need? I'll take you back. Saying this, he directly picked me up and walked, treating me like a dog on a leash. I can't stand it anymore. Ethan, let go of me. He turned his head and gave me a mocking glance, saying, not calling me Dr. Lee anymore? Susanna, have you done so many guilty things that you're afraid to see me? With just one sentence, I was instantly defeated and couldn't struggle anymore. After all, I truly feel guilty about the insulting breakup back then, and I still feel uneasy about it now. In the end, I had no choice but to accept my fate and let him drag me into the car. Ethan is driving a Mercedes G-Class now. He's made quite a bit of money over the years. What? Regretting breaking up with me back then? Didn't expect I could earn this much now. Did you? He snorted coldly and stepped on the gas. I didn't want to lose face. Of course not. The inheritance my husband left me could buy several G-Classes. Who wouldn't pretend to be better off than they are? Anyway, since Ethan is convinced I've squandered the inheritance, I might as well brag. But why do I suddenly feel a chill in the car? The temperature is as unstable as Ethan. 20 minutes later, the car stopped downstairs at my place. I drove you home. Aren't you going to invite me up for a cup of tea? Just as I opened the door to sneak away, Ethan called out to me. Does he have some serious issue? I just want to go home and meet my deadlines to overcome my procrastination. Why does he always have to be an obstacle? My husband doesn't like strange men coming to my house. I wore a look of refusal, conveniently pulling out my non-existent late husband as a shield. Your husband is dead. He remembered clearly. My husband used to get jealous when he was alive. I'm afraid if I take you upstairs, he'll get jealous and angry, jump out of his coffin, and strangle you. I was seriously spouting nonsense. Of course, the words weren't important. The key point was expressing that I didn't want him to go upstairs. Susanna, are you growing older without growing wiser? Without resorting to personal attacks, I was so angry that I wanted to scold him to vent my frustration. Just as I turned my head, I collided with his deep eyes, his dark gaze fixed on me, making me feel uneasy. The next second, I turned and ran. I jogged back home, finally shaking off Ethan, that big nuisance, happily knocking on the door. I called for my son to open it. When the door opened and I saw my son's face, my mood improved even more. But why does my son's expression seem a bit strange? He looked behind me, pouting and almost crying. Mom, I saw that uncle again. Is he going to come into my dreams tonight and pretend to be my dad? Taking advantage of me. Chapter 7. My son's words startled me. He wasn't having a fever. So why was he talking nonsense? Seeing ghosts in broad daylight is not a good sign. I followed my son's gaze suspiciously and looked behind me, only to see Ethan walking towards my house, and my expression instantly froze. He actually followed me up here, just for a cup of tea. Really? What did you dream about? Ethan stood by the door, leaning over me to talk to my son. Hearing him talk about dreams, I suddenly got anxious, quickly pulled my son into the house to separate the two, and most importantly, to stop my son from talking nonsense. No dreams. Ha ha ha. Kids don't dream. I seriously brushed off the comment, and my good son weakly contradicted me from behind. Mom, I do dream. No, you don't. I quickly interrupted him, realizing that this child could really chatter in front of his dad. If he kept going, he'd even reveal how many pairs of underwear he has. I turned my head and gave him a meaningful look, hoping that the tacit understanding between us mother and son would come into play today. But in the end, I was wrong. Mom, is your eye twitching? Let the doctor uncle take a look at it quickly. Look, my good son really cares about his mom. Twitching eye? Ethan suddenly leaned towards me, startling me so much that my whole body tensed up. And most importantly, my limbs wouldn't work. I couldn't move. I'll reluctantly take a look for you. Don't worry. I won't charge you. Consider it a free consultation. His body was getting closer and closer to me. My eye wasn't twitching before, but now I'm so nervous it's really about to twitch. Can you not get so close? Seeing Ethan almost bump into my nose, I shivered all over and raised my hand to push him away. Haha. I've quit smoking, so I won't waste medical resources anymore. Dr. Lee. I've safely arrived home. You should hurry back. Thank you for bringing me home. After saying that, I stepped into the house, holding the door with a smiling face while subtly issuing an eviction notice. If he didn't leave soon, I'd start cursing in my mind. However, Ethan completely ignored me and went to play with my son. Child, I brought your mom back. Shouldn't you invite me in for a cup of tea? Seeing my son's thoughtful expression, I knew we were doomed. Sure enough, the next second he looked at me seriously and said, Mom, the teacher said we should be grateful and repay kindness. Let's invite Uncle in to thank him. He. Ethan, I really have to thank you. Huh, my son is obviously very intelligent. But in front of you, his dad, he turns into a brainless state. But, am I someone who gives in so easily? Martin, Uncle is still at work. He can't be delayed from saving lives. I'm not working today. Ethan, are you going to die if you don't ruin things? Can't you see I'm not welcoming you? Then why are you at the hospital today? I almost gritted my teeth as I spat out the sentence. Bored at home. So I came to the hospital to help. Haha, you're not just bored, are you? Coming to provoke your ex-girlfriend. You must be overstuffed. Since that's the case, Ethan, doctor, come in and have a cup of tea to digest. It seems today he is determined to drink this cup of tea, hoping he finishes it quickly and leaves. He walked into my house without any hesitation and took off his shoes. Shoes. There are no men's shoes at home, so you'll have to make do and go barefoot. Actually, there are shoes in the shoe cabinet that my dad wore when he visited, but I don't want to let him wear them. Who knew he wouldn't be angry at all? Instead, he smiled. No matter how you look at it, it seems suspicious. Why is he so happy to be barefoot? After entering the house, his eyes darted around. If he hadn't come in through the front door, you'd think he was here to rob the place. Martin, take Uncle to the sofa. Mom will go make tea. This is the second time we've met, and Ethan hasn't noticed anything. He probably wouldn't think that my son is his son, right? I temporarily put my mind at ease to make tea. When I came out of the kitchen, the father and son were chatting quite happily. Why isn't there anything of your dad's in your house? Mom said she's afraid of being reminded of him, so she put everything away. My mom loves my dad very much. I've seen her secretly crying. Good son. The statement directly made Ethan's face darken. Beautiful. He wants to come here and pick a fight with me? No way. Chapter 8. Yes. The child's father and I were very much in love before he passed away. Every time I think of him, I feel very sad. So I put away all his belongings. When it comes to my son, I must cooperate. Of course. Except for the fact that Ethan is dead. Everything else is quite true. In the 2 years after we broke up, I would cry every time I saw his photo. And seeing my son in my arms reminded me of him, almost making me cry every day. Dr. Ethan, have some tea. This was left by my husband before he passed away. And there isn't much left. You're lucky to have caught it. I grinned as I placed the tea in front of him, sincerely inviting him to drink. I'm best at making sarcastic remarks. Ethan's face darkened visibly, looking as if he wanted to crush the teacup, and it seemed he wanted to crush me even more. I pretended not to understand and continued to fan the flames. Doctor, have some tea. Uncle, you should drink it. My mom makes good tea. Under the watchful eyes of my son and me, Ethan picked up the teacup and drank it all in one go. Luckily, I just let it cool down a bit. Otherwise, if he drank it all at once, how many blisters would he get in his mouth? TSK, TSK, TSK. Ethan placed the teacup on the coffee table with a dark expression and stood up abruptly. I have something to do, so I'll leave now. Oh, leaving so soon. Huh? Just as I hoped. All right. Dr. Lee, take care. I enthusiastically saw him out, almost writing excitement on my face, having to restrain myself. When we reached the door, I didn't forget to add, hurry to your father-in-law's appointment, and don't be late. I was kindly reminding him, but Ethan looked at me in such a strange way. Just because of Ethan's glance before he left, I couldn't sleep well for several days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his ambiguous smile, which was extremely annoying. However, there was one benefit. Since I couldn't sleep well, I simply got up to write, and by the end of the month, I had finished writing ahead of schedule. When the editor saw the manuscript, they said the sun must have risen from the west. I thought after that coincidental encounter with Ethan I would never see him again. I didn't inquire about him, and he should be getting married to Gabriella by now. After the end of the month, my life relaxed again, entering a daily lazy mode, while my good son entered a mode of urging me to update. Mom, if you don't right now, Aunt Editor will urge you again at the end of the month. Son, how about we stop watching Journey to the West? My good son, why don't you learn from Sun Wukong? Instead, you insist on learning from Tang Monk chanting scriptures. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. I was a bit puzzled about who would come to my house at this time, so I got up to open the door. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Ethan standing at the entrance. Why are you back again? Before I could finish speaking, he walked right past me into the house, naturally and familiarly changing his shoes, as if this were his own home. Oh, Dr. Uncle, you're here. My son seemed visibly surprised to see Ethan. Could it be some kind of father-son telepathy? The two of them, right in front of me, held hands and went straight to the sofa, completely ignoring me. Hey, if I remember correctly, I'm the owner of this house, right? Looking at the uninvited Ethan, I was filled with anger and walked over discontentedly, shouting, Ethan, what exactly are you doing? He looked up at me, his face weary, with noticeable red veins in his eyes. Susanna, I'm so tired. With just one sentence, I instantly gave up. It's been 6 years. 6 years since I last heard him call me that. And those deep-seated memories were instantly unearthed. Scenes from our university days flooded my mind. Countless times he called my name, tender and gentle. My nose tingled, and I casually threw out a line, whatever you want. Then I returned to my room. That's right. I did make a hasty retreat. If I stayed any longer, I was afraid I would burst into tears. I leaned against the headboard, reflecting on the events of the past few days, utterly exhausted. What is Ethan up to? Chapter 9. After a while, I heard the sound of footsteps at the door. Without looking, I knew it was my son coming in. Sure enough, a few seconds later, he ran in and jumped straight into my arms. Mom, why aren't you playing anymore? I gave his chubby little face a good squeeze, seeing how much fun he just had playing with his dad. I refuse to admit that I'm a bit jealous. Uncle has fallen asleep. I paused for a moment, let my son play by himself, and went out to take a look. When I got to the living room, I saw Ethan lying on the sofa, sleeping soundly, but his brows were tightly furrowed, as if he was unhappy. I thought to myself, he is now successful in his career and has a powerful father-in-law. A double win. What more could he be dissatisfied with? I originally didn't want to bother with him, but in the end, I softened and threw a blanket over him. I considerately left his face uncovered, mainly because I was afraid he might suffocate, and it wouldn't be good if my place turned into a crime scene. Returning to the bedroom, my son once again threw himself into my arms. Seeing his little face twisted in thought, I knew this child had something on his mind. Son, is there something you want to tell Mom? No one knows a child better than their mother. As soon as I asked, he couldn't wait to start babbling. Mom, I think that Uncle looks like my dad. Does anyone know that? When I heard this sentence, my face almost split open. What did my good son just say? How did he know the truth? Also, can I take back the question I just asked? Why did I have to ask him? In the spirit of seeking the truth, I tentatively asked my good son, Son, why do you think that? He propped his little head with his small hand and said seriously, a man's sixth sense. I just feel he is my dad. My face was full of black lines. Son, do you really want your young mother to die of awkwardness? A little kid. Yet he has a man's sixth sense, although he guessed right. But as his mother, I must cruelly nip his sixth sense in the bud. Son, your feelings are mistaken. You just really want to have a dad. I said it seriously, having lied so much that it had become second nature to me. He looked at me, then pouted and accepted my answer. All right then. I watched as I successfully fooled him, and just as I was about to celebrate, he dropped another bombshell. Mom, Grandpa said you should go back to your hometown for a blind date. If you remain a single woman of a certain age, it will be embarrassing for him. My forehead was once again covered in black lines. What on earth had my dad been teaching him? Fortunately, my son is still young and easy to fool. With just a few words, I managed to divert his attention, and eventually, he got tired from playing and fell asleep in my arms. There was one person asleep inside, and another asleep outside. With the atmosphere set like this, it seemed inappropriate for me not to take a nap. When I woke up and went out to the living room, there was only a neatly folded blanket on the sofa, and Ethan had already left. In that moment, I actually felt a bit disappointed. I realized I was scolding myself for being so foolishly lost in wild thoughts. At that moment, I noticed a message on my phone. Something came up at the hospital. I went back first. Without even thinking, I knew it was from Ethan. I didn't reply, letting it sink like a stone in the sea. I thought things would end there. But unexpectedly, I received messages from him every day after that, almost like spam. The most crucial thing is that the messages he sent made me think someone had stolen his phone. For example, it's going to rain today. Remember to bring an umbrella when picking up Martin from school. The weather has been hot lately. You and Martin should drink more water. In summer, eating some bitter melon can help cool down. You can buy more bitter melon when shopping. Messages like this keep popping up. I have a question. Ethan, when did he become so fussy? Did the hormones in the foreign water turn him into a different gender? In the end, I didn't reply to his message because I couldn't think of a suitable response, so I let him show off alone. Chapter 10. A few days later in the afternoon, I was deeply engaged in discussing the outline with the editor, and by the time we finished, it was already past the time for my son to get out of school. In a panic, I ran out wearing a pair of slippers. I raised my son on my own, and although I'm usually carefree, in critical moments, I get really anxious, fearing any accidents. When I arrived at the kindergarten gate, The scene before my eyes nearly blinded me. Ethan was actually holding my son at the entrance. In that moment, 100 thoughts flashed through my mind. Could he have found out something? Is he here to fight for my son? Can I win a custody battle? Would my son be unwilling to stay with me? Frightened by my own thoughts, I rushed over in the next second. Ethan, let go of my son. If you dare to abduct my son, I'll fight you to the death. My voice was like a thunderclap out of nowhere, startling the woman next to me, who looked at Ethan nervously, scrutinizing whether he was really a kidnapper. However, my son showed no awareness of cooperating with his mother. Looking at me excitedly, "Mom, Uncle said he would take me to the amusement park. Let's go quickly." Ethan was instantly vindicated, watching him walk ahead holding my son. So close they seemed like conjoined twins. I wished I could go up and tear them apart. I pouted as I followed behind them, refusing to admit I was jealous. Why should my son be so close to him? Seeing me dawdling, Ethan stopped and looked back at me. "Susanna, hurry up." He still had a smile on his face, which was particularly charming. How shameless, using his good looks on me, and how useless I am to fall for it again. After all these years, why am I still not immune to his charms? We went straight to the amusement park in Ethan's car. My son was already very excited before we even got out of the car, and he became even more excited after Ethan accompanied him on all the rides. I stood outside the fence watching Ethan take my son on the bumper cars. Seeing him laugh so happily made me feel happy too, but also a bit uneasy. It really seems different whether a child has a dad during childhood. This mysterious thing called fatherly love is something I, as a mom, truly cannot replace. Mom, Uncle is amazing. He pushed everyone else away. After it ended, good son ran towards me happily holding Ethan's hand, his little face full of pride, a little mouth chattering non-stop. Uncle even took me to the haunted house. "Mom, you didn't dare to take me there. Mom, next time let's go with Uncle again." Until today, I didn't know my son was such a chatterbox, noisier than 100,000 ducks. Finally, he got tired and fell asleep, and my ears finally got some peace. The car arrived downstairs at my house, and as I was holding my son ready to go upstairs, Ethan snatched my job as soon as I got out of the car. Looking at my empty hands, I was so angry I wanted to snatch him back. But his legs are long and he's tall. I couldn't keep up or reach him. After getting home, I sat on the sofa, my mind churning more than the waves, and I decided I was going to confront Ethan. Seeing him just come out of my son's room, I shouted, "Ethan, what exactly are you doing?" Chapter 11. He didn't rush to answer me but instead came over, took a small stool belonging to my son, and sat in front of me. If the atmosphere weren't so tense, I would have sarcastically remarked, "Don't you know how big you are? If you break my son's stool, will you compensate? Tell me, what do you mean by this? If you're not sneaking into my house, you're abducting my son. What exactly are you up to?" I crossed my arms, glaring at him, almost bursting into Chongqing dialect. He suddenly stood up, placing his hands on the coffee table, leaning his head towards me, his eyes fixed on mine, and deliberately made his voice sound magnetic. "Susanna, don't you understand what I mean?" I was made nervous all over by his sudden flirtation, feeling my ears burning. You don't come any closer. How would I understand what you mean?" Suddenly being so close made me stutter. "Ethan, this damned charm, when will I ever be able to resist it?" "Susanna, I want to be Martin's stepfather." Pfft. His words almost scared me off the sofa. What the heck? Be my son's stepfather? But it's no wonder he said that. After all, he doesn't know he's the child's real father. But what nerve did he have to say such a thing? I tried hard to widen my eyes and looked him up and down. Finally couldn't help but ask, "Ethan, did you get your head stuck in a door today? What nonsense is he talking about? Such a high and mighty person becoming a stepfather?" I could clearly see him holding back before continuing to talk to me. "You lost a husband. Martin lost a father. I'm single. We just make a family. I'm not joking with you. What I said today is serious. Think about it." After Ethan left, I sat on the sofa contemplating life, and after a long time, I still couldn't understand why Ethan would fall from grace to become my son's stepfather. This doesn't fit his character at all. Soon, My son woke up from his nap, rubbing his eyes with his bare little feet, and groggily came over. Mom, where is Uncle? Well, the first thing he does after waking up is look for Ethan. As his mother, do I even hold any place in his heart? Son, come here. Mom has something to ask you. What is it? My good son immediately perked up, looking at me seriously. Son, why do you like Uncle so much? I've been puzzled by this question for several days. They've only met a few times. So why does my good son like Ethan so much? Could it really be because of the blood relationship? He climbed into my arms and said very seriously, Uncle feels like Dad. The kids in kindergarten all say their dads take them out to play. Uncle also takes me out to play. He accompanies me like Dad. And I really like him. Mom, next time don't let Uncle sleep on the sofa. It's a bit pitiful. I didn't know whether to feel sad or laugh at his words. He even knows that sleeping on the sofa is pitiful. Looking at my son's innocent face, what came to my mind was Ethan talking about being a stepfather to Martin, and I was seriously considering it. Whether it's Ethan or not, Martin seems like he should have a dad. Some facts must be acknowledged. Growing up without a dad's companionship leads to deficiencies in life and thought. And as a mom, I can't be too selfish. I always thought I could raise him well on my own, but I've found it's far from enough. How would you feel if Uncle became your dad? Chapter 12. When I asked that question, my son was so excited he almost jumped up. He really likes Ethan. The saying like father, like son is not wrong. After this, Ethan frequently came to accompany Martin, each time either bringing lots of food or many toys. He was completely like a sycophant trying to please my son. I must say, the academic genius's brain is indeed clever, knowing that my son is my soft spot, and he tries to please me through my son. Of course, he is still very good to me, helping with laundry and cooking, almost taking over all the housework. If it weren't for his work, he would probably be available at my beck and call. It was also because of his enthusiasm that I found out he and Gabriella are not together. It seems Gabriella's skill level isn't that high either, having chased Ethan for so many years without success. However, we shouldn't talk about people behind their backs. Just as we mentioned Gabriella, she showed up. Susanna, you broke up 6 years ago. A broken mirror can't be made whole again. Why are you still clinging to Ethan? Gabriella invited me for coffee, and as soon as I sat down, she started bombarding me, but I wasn't happy with what she said. I refused to take the blame for this. Clearly, he's the one clinging to me, isn't he? Why don't you do me a favor and tell him to stop trying to be my son's stepfather? Gabriella's face fell at a speed visible to the naked eye, and her earlier smile froze on her face. She wanted to give me a hard time, but it turns out Ethan would rather be a stepfather than be with her. I feel embarrassed for her. I leisurely sipped my coffee, waiting for her next move. Susanna, back then I could make you leave Ethan, and I can do it again now. Haha. Why don't you tell me your methods and see if I feel threatened by you? I rolled my eyes, thinking that if she could threaten me back then, she could do it now? Does she think I haven't grown in 6 years like she hasn't? Back then, you broke up with him for Ethan's chance to go abroad. Aren't you worried about his future now? I'm telling you clearly, as long as you don't pester him, he will marry me, and my dad can ensure his promotion at the hospital. Gabriella spoke with great confidence. After all, it helps to have a capable father. Thinking about my old man, well, he might as well just stay home and walk the birds. What does Ethan's promotion have to do with me? Using this to threaten me is useless. I say, Gabriella, it's been 6 years. Can't you change your threatening tactics? Even if you're not tired of it. I am. I finished the last sip of coffee, got up, and was ready to leave. It's almost time for my son to finish school, and I can't be bothered to waste my expressions on idle talk with Gabriella. The only joy today was getting a free cup of coffee and enjoying the air conditioning. But maybe I should skip it next time. Watching Gabriella drink coffee makes me worry about indigestion. Perhaps I upset her, because as soon as I stood up, Gabriella frantically shouted, Susanna, aren't you worried about Ethan's future? No sooner had she finished speaking than Ethan appeared by my side. My future doesn't need anyone else's concern, especially not yours. Gabriella, Ethan, I do enjoy watching him argue, but where is he putting his hand? Did I allow him to put it on my waist? He better be careful, or I'll chop it off. Ethan, I'm doing this for your own good. You know how much my dad values you. Gabriella was almost in tears. Her ability to change expressions was as quick as the face changing in Sichuan opera. Gabriella, let me say it again, my affairs and my future don't need your input. We have no relationship. And as for the teacher, I'll thank him myself. After speaking, he directly pulled me away. I hadn't even reacted yet, and the drama was already over? However, before leaving, I specifically looked at Gabriella's expression, and it was truly more miserable than crying. After pursuing a man for so many years, only to be told that there's nothing between them, her heart must be breaking. Truly pitiful. I absolutely admit. I'm gloating. Holding grudges is one of my fine traditions. Chapter 13. Ethan pulled me away with a grim face. And he was very strong. His anger today is comparable to when we broke up back then, but I don't understand why he's angry. Is he really this unpredictable? His emotional management is terrible. He dragged me straight to the parking lot, opened the door, and tossed me into the car. Ethan, what are you doing? Is it polite to take me away without asking my opinion? The fact is, I didn't even have the right to refuse because he locked the car door, and I certainly couldn't jump out. Looking at this driving speed, to save my life and see my son get married and have children, I chickened out. No matter what I said along the way, Ethan ignored me. Finally, the car drove into a building, and I looked at this iconic landmark. Wow, a mansion. Son, do you know? Your dad is really rich. Of course. He still needs to prove his character. He has never taken a single thing from a patient's family. He relies entirely on his own abilities. Before I could finish admiring the mansion's parking lot, he directly pulled me into the elevator and then straight into his home. From start to finish, I had already given up resisting. Since I was already here, I might as well be a country bumpkin visiting the city and enjoy the sights. However, Ethan was clearly holding something back, not willing to give me a chance to admire. Susanna, you finally spoke up. I could see you were holding it in the whole way. It must have been uncomfortable. I sat carelessly on the sofa, still in the mood to joke with him, but inside I was extremely anxious. Looking at Ethan's face, which seemed like he wanted to eat me alive. Could he be thinking of silencing me and then having our son all to himself? I saw him take several deep breaths. 6 years ago, when you broke up with me, was it because Gabriella threatened you with my opportunity to go abroad? Although it was a question, his tone was affirmative. Oh no, he overheard the conversation at the coffee shop just now, but I was stubborn and unwilling to admit my self-sacrificing foolishness back then. He said, how could it be? I really do want to find a sugar daddy. He said, then look at where I live now, the car I drive, and my savings. Do I look like a sugar daddy? You can come and rely on me. As he spoke, he directly handed me a bank card. This move left me completely baffled. Should I maintain the persona of someone looking for a sugar daddy, or should I let it collapse? Ethan sighed and sat down beside me, squeezing my shoulders with both hands. This domineering CEO pose was quite handsome. No, wait. He's leading me astray again. What exactly is he trying to do? Susanna, I already know the truth from back then. You were deceived by Gabriella. The opportunity for me to go abroad was open and transparent. I earned it myself. No one could manipulate it behind the scenes. If only you had studied more seriously back then, you wouldn't have been so easily deceived. The moment I heard the truth, I was indeed stunned and didn't recover for quite a while. So I was tricked by Gabriella? And I even believed her nonsense. Feeling self-righteous as a love fool, willing to break up for my boyfriend's future and raise my son alone. Isn't this the plot of a cliched Mary Sue story? Should I congratulate myself for becoming a Mary Sue protagonist? Susanna, are you okay? Ethan thought something had happened to me because I hadn't spoken for a while. I looked up at him, pouting and feeling a bit like crying. I want to be alone. I just found out today that I'm not very smart, and my feelings about it are quite complicated. Ethan held me in his arms with a helpless expression, showing the deepest affection since our reunion. Susanna, let's reconcile. We've missed 6 years. Let's not miss any more. An academic genius is indeed an academic genius. Even their sweet talk sounds so charming. Although his recent behavior has moved me, and although I was the one who made the decision and was at fault first, and even though the son is also his, I just don't want to agree so quickly. I'll go home and ask my son to see if he wants you as his stepfather. Chapter 14. Saying that was definitely a misstep on my part, because as soon as I finished speaking, he dragged me to find my good son, and then immediately asked my son if he wanted him as a stepfather. My son excitedly agreed in a second, as if he didn't want to think about it for even a moment. Since then, Ethan, regardless of whether I agreed or not, would drop by my house every few days, and it eventually developed into him staying at my place every day. Given that my son likes him, I turned a blind eye. In the end, he wasn't satisfied with just my son's bed. He even wanted to share the master bedroom with me. Quite the ambitious plan. However, I still haven't told my son that Ethan is his biological father, mainly because I missed the best opportunity, and now I don't know how to bring it up. So I simply became a turtle hiding in its shell. Eventually, my father completely exposed the situation. One afternoon, the three of us were sitting on the sofa watching TV when the door suddenly opened, and we all turned our heads to see my dad coming in with a bunch of stuff. My first reaction was oh no, as the fact that I used my dad to deceive Ethan was about to be exposed. Sure enough, Ethan was staring at me, his eyes a bit intimidating, as if to say, how did he come here? There really is a big shot. In the end, it was my son who broke the deadlock. Grandpa, I missed you so much. The good son rushed into his grandpa's arms, while I kept my head down the whole time, not daring to look at Ethan's expression. He leaned close to my ear and said with a smile, so the rich guy you hooked up with back then was your dad? Huh? Hee hee. Oh my dear grandson, you're still the good one. Look at your mom. She can't even bear to move from the sofa. As soon as my dad arrived, he started criticizing me. Ever since I had my son, I'm no longer his little darling. After he finished hugging his grandson, he finally noticed Ethan on the sofa. Oh, you finally decided to find a stepfather for Martin. He sat down excitedly and began scrutinizing Ethan. I saw Ethan sitting there looking sharp, saying hello, uncle, as if he were meeting his future father-in-law. My dad looked left and right, and just when he felt satisfied, he suddenly dropped a bombshell. Why does he look so familiar? Isn't he the dead dad of Martin you mentioned? As soon as he said that, 3 pairs of eyes turned to me in unison, especially Ethan's gaze, which made me feel uneasy. He he he. He 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 he. Laughter is healthier. I laughed awkwardly, just wishing someone would come to my rescue. Mom, you better stop laughing and come clean. In the end, I had to reveal that my son is Ethan's biological child. I saw Ethan almost burst into tears with excitement. The atmosphere was so intense that it made me want to cry. As for how my dad knew Ethan was my son's father, it was because he had seen the photos. When I went back home pregnant, my dad, a looks enthusiast, said I could have the child and he would raise it, but he was worried about the child's genes and whether it would be good looking. No matter how much I assured him, he didn't believe me. In the end, I had no choice but to show him Ethan's photo and tell him Ethan had already passed away. My dad looked at the child's father, found him handsome with good genes, and was instantly satisfied. Then, under the whole family's anticipation, my son was born. While I was reminiscing about the past, the 3 of them were chatting away, and indeed, the father-in-law was becoming more and more pleased with the son-in-law. Just when I was satisfied that everything was resolved, I was unexpectedly pulled up by Ethan, who directly dragged me to the bedroom. Hey, Ethan, what are you doing? Let's talk about this properly. I want to talk to you about how Martin's biological father passed away. And then you asked me to be a stepfather to my own biological son. Oh, it's all a misunderstanding. As soon as I finished speaking, the door to the room was closed, and neither my dad nor my son came to rescue me. They were still deep in discussion. Grandpa, where did my mom and dad go? They went to give you a little sister. Haven't you always wanted your mom to give you a little sister? Your wish is about to come true. Forget it. I still have to rely on myself. Looking at the approaching Ethan, I pretended to be calm. Surprise. I'm giving you a 5-year-old son. Are you surprised? Are you shocked? What greeted me was a fierce kiss. And it was a vengeful one. Finally, Ethan buried his head in my neck and said hoarsely, "Susanna, I really like this surprise."